Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to ABCA. It's another fun year at this convention. My name is Mike Napoleon. I am one of the owners of VELO Sports. And we have a lot of cool kind of new training products here for bat speed. And I'm not gonna make this presentation all about some of the products that we have out there. You can come see us at our booth. We're at 1811. I really wanna talk about some of the science behind bat speed training and also just kind of what really affects bat speed out in the world. My background is in coaching in multiple sports at this point, but I would say I've spent the last solid 15 years of my coaching existence looking at speed when it comes to swinging sports. So whether you're swinging a baseball bat or a golf club or a tennis racket, it doesn't matter. I've kind of researched and figured out how to make people swing those implements as fast as humanly possible. And some of this is the culmination of all of that, of looking at what's efficient with bat speed training, what's been done well in the past, what's not been done so well, and how can we make it better and just more efficient for each one of your players to increase bat speed. So let's take a look at the first thing there, and I think this is a big question, is why is bat speed important to baseball? Now, how many of you guys out there are coaches? How many baseball coaches we've got? Have you guys ever had a player come in and just be like, coach, if I could just swing the bat a little bit slower, I think I could make it to the next level? Anybody? I mean, again, it makes no sense. It's a very easy question here that bat speed helps everything that we're going to look at in the game. The number one thing that bat speed helps is exit velo. And exit velo is really important to what we're dealing with in baseball. As far as looking at players from one level to the next is probably the number one stat that we're going to be looking at for recruiting players into college or into the pros. Well, exit velo is bat speed times impact ratio. So impact ratio is going to be basically the contact with the bat and how much energy is going to get transferred from the bat to the baseball. Bat speed is really the only factor that we can control in this situation, okay? So increasing bat speed has a direct impact on increasing exit velo and really everything else about your positive hitting stats. Now, when we look at this, exit velo is a big deal. Again, this isn't just about hitting more home runs. More exit velo also helps us get that ball, past the shortstop or get another hit that they can't get to. It's more doubles, it's everything. So it's a really big deal. The other thing that happens, really what we call that is this idea of a trickle-down effect. So the faster the ball comes off the bat, the higher the probability is that that's going to end up being a hit or an extra base hit. All of those statistics increase as we increase how fast the ball is coming off the bat. Now, when we start to look at leagues below the pros, we start to look at some really interesting stuff here. In youth baseball right now, we have most of the bats, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, it's a good thing that we've actually reduced that impact ratio on the bats from a safety standpoint for a lot of these kids. Well, that makes it even more important, though, that the kid is able to swing the bat faster, because if your impact ratio on your bat is 1.3, for every mile an hour of bat speed that you can produce that much more exit velo. But if we've reduced that down to 1.1 or 1.05 into these lower youth reduced impact ratio bats, now you need even more bat speed to get to that next jump point as far as what we're looking at as far as exit velo. And this just makes it incredibly important that, especially in the youth side, that we're worrying about training this type of a concept early, and that these kids can get the most out of it then and also later on. There's also been tons of great research done on a development side that shows that there's incredibly opportune times when we can train speed and power type abilities for kids. And if we miss those windows when we're going along with the development, we kind of reduce that overall ceiling of what that player is going to be capable of later in their career. And when you look back at some of the like biggest power hitters ever, and you look at some of the things they did when they were kids, a lot of it had to do with running fast and jumping high and throwing hard. And whether it was, in baseball or other sports, they developed those elite levels of speed and power early on in their careers. So the next big question I have for all of you coaches is, if we look at this categorically, what are the different things that affect exit velo? So again, bat speed's kind of what we can control and train. Exit velo is what we want. So what are the things that affect exit velo? If we're going to be comprehensive about looking at this, we kind of need to look at all of these different characteristics. So the first that I think is a no-brainer, and I think that we've been training pretty well in baseball for a long time, physical characteristics of that player will have an impact. Like if you've got just a monster of an athlete, that person's going to be stronger and can potentially swing the bat faster than somebody that weighs 150 pounds soaking wet. However, there's a lot more to this. It's not just strength. We can start to look at different levels of functional mobility. We can start to look at different levels of what type of muscle fiber and stuff that we're dealing with. There's all kinds of areas here in the physical side, and I think this is an incredibly important area when we're trying to max out bat speed and exit velo. How many people's players do physical training? Yeah, I think this is one that, in the baseball world in general, this is something that's very common, and I think that's a really good thing. The second one is mechanics. How many people in here teach your players mechanics? Okay, now there are mechanics that affect speed and power positively. There's some that affect speed and power negatively. I'll show you a little bit here later on some of our philosophy and our theories about mechanics, but I can tell you that it's really important, if you're not already looking at the way those players are sequencing, if you're not looking at the way those players use the ground and how ground reaction forces affect the way they're swinging the bat, that is the new age of this stuff, and it's incredibly important to maxing out that player's potential to create bat speed and exit velo. Now, the third one's another one that's become really, really popular here in the last few years, now that we have all these different launch monitors like, TrackMan and Rapsodo and all these cool things that can show us what we call contact physics. Now, I also lump the actual bat into this. So this is an area where, if we start to look at bat fitting for the player, can be something that's going to affect contact physics. Contact physics is everything that has to do with how that bat and the ball interact and making that as efficient as possible. That has to do with, optimizing where you hit it on the bat. That has to do with launch angles, spin rates. All of these things are going to affect the exit velo of that ball. Now, I think bat fitting is probably one of the things that is coming. It's getting bigger in the world of baseball, but I think that's probably one of the areas where, this sport may be a little bit behind still. I think this is something that all of your players will, even just simple things like taking 6 or 7 different bats, testing it on a launch monitor and seeing which one produces the best exit velo, the best, numbers. Like that kind of thing is wildly unpopular, actually, I think, in some ways in baseball. It's coming, and it's definitely something that I think you should be doing with all of your players if you aren't already. Now, the fourth factor is one that is not talked about nearly as much, and this is really where our training products kind of come in, kind of created their own new little category. It's what we call the neurological. I like to think of this as like an analogy to a race car, all right? If we have a race car, we look at the physical characteristics of that race car, that would be really commonly close to like the size of the engine, right? If I've got a player that's really, really strong, or I've got an engine that's got tons of horsepower, the potential is there to create a tremendous amount of speed. However, that race car still needs some mechanical elements. It needs a steering wheel and pedals and all the different things like that, or the driver couldn't control it. And it doesn't matter how big the engine is, because it's still going to drive off the track. After that race car also needs specific tires and specific amounts of downforce and all of those type of things, so that it's going to optimize how fast it can go on that particular track. And that would be analogous to like the contact physics piece or the bat fitting side. The other piece that's really important to that car is the computer inside of it that makes all of those things work together and also allows that car to make a hairpin turn or to brake or to stop or to pass another car. And in our player's body, that's the brain. Because our brain controls how we move and really controls every aspect of how we move when we're in the box. All right, we're gonna get a little sciencey here for a second, and I will say this is kind of oversimplified, so if there's any of our sports scientists that are out there, there is a lot more to this, but I think this is an important thing to look at. So motor units are how we move. So in our brain, we have hundreds of millions of these motor neurons called dendrites, the little blue things, so that's our brain. Our brain connects to the muscles of our body through motor neurons, or through nerves, and then when they connect to the muscles, those muscles are in our body and are going to react with an action. So when we move, when we're in the box and we pull the trigger to make a swing, what happens is a signal originates in our brain, it travels down our central nervous system, arrives at our muscles respond with that programmed motion. So, and that's how we move, whether we're making a bat swing or whether we're trying to jump or whether we're doing a power clean. It all starts in the brain and then the muscles react. I think that's a very important consideration to look at here because we still talk about things like muscle memory, and those are processes that work in our brain and cause our bodies to react to them. This is a really key point. So a lot of our training is based on what we call overspeed training now, which is kind of the new version of what you guys would have thought of as overload, underload training for a long time. But these are some of the details that are really important to neurological training. Number one, it's going to train the entire motion every single rep. So we're not breaking down the swing into little pieces. We're not trying to work on little pieces of it. We're working on the entire system, and it's going to happen at maximum speed. I think this is another key point where sometimes coaches think they're working on speed, but they're actually not. If you're not working the entire motion and you're not working it at maximum speed, you're not really working on speed. Now, you might be working on a mechanical element that could later affect speed, but speed training in itself has to work the entire system and it has to work at maximum speed. Now, because of that, most of this training has to also work at very low reps because how many cuts can you make at absolute max intensity before your body can't produce that same result again? So you'll notice in all of the protocols that we create for speed training, we're not doing 800 swings. We're doing a handful of swings at maximum intensity. The other thing that you should see whenever you're doing neurological training, and that's whether it's for bat speed, or there's neurological training that you can do for range of motion and various other things, you're always going to see immediate results right after that session. So if you have a player and they go through a speed training session and you check their bat speed before they go through that session, when at the end or after that session, their bat speed should be higher or something didn't work right. Either the training that you're doing is really not speed training, or that player did too many reps and is so fatigued at the end that they're unable to produce those maximum speed numbers. But you should always see immediate results right after the session. Now, those immediate results right after a session are not permanent right away. That neurological effect that we're going to get in this training will diminish over about the next half hour to an hour. That's why you have to do this training repeatedly for time to create permanency. But you should see in an immediate before and after, you should always see an immediate positive result from this training. So we define overspeed training, pretty simply as making your body move faster than normal during something it already knows how to do in order to change or increase the expectation of how fast you should move. So again, like if I'm stepping in the box and I'm going to have just a pitch machine in the cage, whenever I make a cut, my brain expects my body to move at a certain speed. What we're doing with overspeed training is we're going to be messing around with the actual MOI of the bat that player's swinging in a number of different ways to kind of trick the brain into expecting a faster result. Another way to put this is that we're accessing speed that that player is already capable of producing and their brain has just limited or shut off. So we like to think of that as like taking the governor off the engine for a player. Now again, this isn't the only training that I would recommend these players do. I want them also working on their physical program to get stronger, to get more range of motion, to get all the different physical benefits that they need to make the engine of that car bigger. I want them working on their mechanics as well. I think mechanics is incredibly important in order to take better advantage of that engine. This is, again, just taking that entire system, taking the physical piece, the mechanics piece, all of it, and kind of putting it together in making now your brain actually expect your body to move faster and kind of fine-tune the computer that runs that entire system. How many people would like to see about a 6% gain in your player's bat speed? All right, I think it's a pretty good number. We've done a lot of studies on this training at this point. We've done studies actually near this area in Virginia. We've had studies done out in Utah with our good friend, Dr. Tyler Standiford. You can meet him. He's over at our booth at 1811. Come say hi to him if you want to get really into the weeds on the science of this. One of our ambassadors, Matt Antonelli up in Boston, just finished a big study group with a group of about 80 players that finished up in December, and we're seeing about the same result. So we see on average in that first 8 to 10 week series of doing this, you see about a 6% gain in bat speed on average. Now that means that some are going to be more than that, some are going to be slightly less. I think in Matt's, is Matt here? Where's Matt? Matt's down here somewhere. I want to say, Matt, out of 80 players, I don't think there was a single one of those players that didn't see an increase in bat speed. So, I mean, that's a pretty good result out of 80 people there. But yeah, that's about what we're going to see when you start this training and you keep them doing it for that 8 to 10 week period. Okay, this is how it works. So I'm holding right now one of our VELO bats. So this is our VELO OverSpeed training system, just to make this as simple as possible. And again, we've tried to make this just easy for players to be able to do this training simply. This base bat that I have is about 20% lighter than in this case, this is a 33 drop 3 set. So this is based around a 33 drop 3 bat. That'll have an effective training range for game bats between 32 and 34 inch drop 3. All right. Now, what that does is because this is 20% lighter there, that player can swing that bat significantly faster. In fact, we'll see players typically be able to swing the 20% light version bat. We'll be able to see that go on average about 16 to 18% faster than their normal bat speed. Now, coaches out there, if somebody just grabs a different bat and all of a sudden their bat speed goes from 70 miles an hour to 94, is that a lot? Is that pretty significant? And again, what happens though is even in just a handful of swings, so in about 3 swings, that player's brain starts to remember that faster reaction speed. The muscles are moving faster, everything's kind of syncing up a little bit in a different speed. So then we immediately go and shock the system. So then we add weight back. So we add a little bit of weight back. So this first sleeve, when it goes on, makes this 10% lighter than their game bat. Well, now all of a sudden, when they make that cut, their brain's expecting 94, okay? And there's a little more resistance, but it's amazing how close they'll get. A lot of times you're still gonna see this in that 12 to 14% faster than their actual game bat speed. And then we shock the system again, we add another little sleeve that stacks on, and now you're gonna be about 5% heavier than the game bat. Now, what's really wild here, and this is where we knew in our initial research, we knew we had something with this, because on average, your players are still going to be swinging this system that's 5% heavier than their game bat, usually between about 8 and 10% faster than their normal bat speed. So we were just sitting there well, why is that? Well, we added resistance, but they're able to now swing it faster. And this is kind of where that whole overspeed training thing goes in, because their body now, their brain expects their body to move as fast as it was with the lighter bats, and now they're able to apply that to this heavier bat, and this is how this training works. As you do this over time, you raise that bar, you take that governor off the engine, and you're gonna see these permanent increases in bat speed. Does that make sense? Any questions on how that actually works as you go through it? I'll show you guys the protocols here. So in a typical protocol that we're going to go through, this is just our level 1 protocol. We've actually built 5 levels of these protocols that work over 3 training cycles. We have a whole bunch of more training content that we've put together with Matt and our team. We're really excited about a lot of this coming out, but these are available for free on our website right now. This is our level 1 protocol. So you're always going to start with the lightest series bat. You start with that light bat to try to move as fast as we possibly can. So with the base bat, we're going to do normal stance. That's just a normal swing, 3 on the dominant side, and then we're going to go 3 on the non-dominant side. Now, that's another conversation that could open up about another 2-hour debate here on it. Not really debate, but information about why we train both the dominant and the non-dominant side swings. There's a ton of great research on this one. I can say that we do this in all of the different sports that we train. We've actually done studies where we've had players only train on the non-dominant side, and we've actually seen pretty similar results in bat speed increase with those players. It's wild how this works. There's a lot of different transference that happens for the players, but we do train both the dominant and non-dominant side. If you want to learn more about that, come see us at our booth. Tyler will literally talk your ear off for about an hour about this stuff. He gets very passionate about non-dominant swings. So anyway, you're going to do 3 on each side. Then we're going to go and add that green sleeve on, so that's the 10% light. 3 on each side. Then we're going to go with what we call a fully loaded VELO bat, 3 on each side. Then we're going to start to add in, not necessarily, drills that can work on mechanics, but we're really just trying to make the swing more aggressive. So we do a stride and go motion where we're trying to get a little bit bigger leg kick, get a little bit more reaction force out of the ground, and we're trying to make each one of those go even faster. So that we're going to do again. We're going to go back and we're going to do it again on that base bat with the lightest version. Then we're going to do the green sleeve, then the fully loaded. We always end our protocols with 3 dominant side max out swings with just the base bat, with just the 20% light. And that's kind of where we want your player to kind of go for their personal best. So we're really just taking rip as fast as we possibly can there. Here's how it works in the different training cycles. So we don't do just that protocol over and over and over again forever. What we recommend is doing that level 1 protocol for about the first 5 weeks. And we're going to recommend that that player trains 3 days a week with a full day off in between. Now, we found that to be important because if we're doing this training every day, you can definitely do this type of training too much. And we definitely deal with that with a lot of our high-level athletes because they, if you tell them to do, you tell them to do 5 reps, they do 15 and they think it's better. And it's like, no, it's not. Again, this training is all about each one of those swings over the course of that week being as fast as that player can possibly move. If you do it too much, you start to diminish those maximums in there. That's really, really important. So then we move on to our level 2 protocol, which is similar in structure. All the protocols are similar in structure and reps and all that kind of thing. They just start to do slightly more advanced drills as far as how we're using the ground, how we're sequencing, and how we're trying to make that bat move even faster. So 10 weeks, we call that the primary phase of the training, and then we move into a maintenance phase. Now, there's another key point here that I think is very important to look at when we look at speed training. It's not linear. You're not going to just see a 0.5% gain every week forever when you're doing speed training. What you're going to see is these kind of jumps. So when we start level 1, if we were to measure before and after the very first session that somebody did with overspeed training, we're going to see on average about that 5 to 6% jump in their before speed, before they did the training, and right after. Now, as I said before, that effect isn't going to be permanent right away after the first session. So they would come back in the second session and their bat speed is going to be close to where it was when they started before. They're going to see again right after that 5 to 6 to 7% jump. As you get into like the second week, third week, fourth week of this, what you'll see is that starting speed is going to start creeping up closer to the jump speed. And then you're going to get to a point in week like 7, 8, where your before speed is now 5 or 6% faster than it was when you started, and the jump speed you're getting after isn't going up that much. It's only going up half a mile an hour or so. It's almost the same. And that's a point where we've kind of reached that first plateau of kind of permanency with this. And once we've done that and done that for a couple weeks, we then want to move into what we call a maintenance phase. And we know through all the different research that we've done at this point that we can reduce the frequency of the training to once a week or even twice a month at that point, and we can maintain the gains that we got out of that initial primary training phase. Now that maintenance phase, we recommend to last for at least 4 weeks. And mainly that's because what we're trying to get when we start the next training cycle is we're trying to get another jump. So we want that player to kind of get, during the primary phase, you get used to doing the training. In the maintenance phase, we kind of get used to not doing the training as much so that we can then get way more intense. We do a little ramp up, get into this second training cycle, and then do some new drills. And we're hoping there to get a second jump. Now that second jump we tend to see is about 3 to 3.5%, but again, like 6% and then another 3%, and then you go to the third training cycle. There is a law of diminishing returns with this. If there wasn't, players would be swinging the bat 140 miles an hour. But you're going to see that as you go up, the jump that you get is going to be a little bit less over time as you continue to do it. But you will see those gains happen in this kind of series of jump and then sort of normalizes, and then you go into a plateau phase, and then we get into these maintenance periods that we have. Now, we have some players that'll do like these primary training phases in the off season, get really intense with the training in the off season. They'll make their entire season a maintenance phase. Okay, so this can be worked around players' schedules in a lot of good ways. We've actually had a lot of, this is kind of a side tangent, which I can't get off on for too long. We've actually had a lot of pitchers in the major leagues now that work on like weighted ball throwing programs, which is essentially overspeed training for throwing, that work on different types of weighted ball programs in the off season, and then actually will work on our training during the season. So it's not adding to pitch counts or throw counts on their training, but they can still get that same neurological stimulation out of swinging, and they can maintain their gains and even gain more speed as they're going through the season without ever having to throw a ball. That's some pretty neat stuff, but again, there's a lot of this that works really well. Another thing I want to talk about here is kind of feedback that we get during the training. Now, there's a lot of different good launch monitors out there. I just want to show you this little guy that we use. It's called the PRGR launch monitor. I like this device for our training a lot because it measures how fast this bat moves. If I just swing in front of it, you heard the little beep. It just measured that bat speed. It gives you instant feedback for how fast the bat is moving on a dry swing during your training. Now, that's really important for 2 reasons. Number one is we can track progress, but the second one is probably more important, and that is for kind of that immediate feedback of how fast that swing was. Why is this key to the training? Well, look, when coaches, if you just said, you said to a player, hey, I just want you to swing harder at this ball. Does that mean that the bat speed's going to go up? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, lots of times no. What happens during this training is this kind of discovery learning situation where that player makes a swing and they feel like they went really hard at it, and they look at the radar and are like, oh, that was the same as the one before it. And then they make another one, and maybe it feels a little bit different with the ground, or the sequencing felt a little bit different, and they look at it and went up 3 miles an hour, and they're like, whoa. And then what that player can do is they remember what that swing felt like, and they repeat it. So it's this kind of self-coaching that they go through during the training that is incredibly important to have some type of device. And if you don't have this one, I just think this is the easiest one that's out there to use. It's why we use it. To be able to instantly see the bat speed. The other cool thing here is that it also can measure exit velo, when you're doing soft toss or off a tee. So you can also use this to do those before and after numbers. And when we're doing our testing, I want to know more than just bat speed. I want to know how is that bat speed affecting their exit velo, and we track all of those different things when we're working with a player to show those actual results of what's going on. All right, real quick on mechanics that affect speed and power. There's a lot of this. This is its own 2-day talk. But I think it's really important just to look at the overall philosophy of what we do at VELO Sports and see if this is kind of consistent with what you guys do. We call this the speed pyramid. Essentially, how fast a player mechanically can swing a bat starts with the way they use the ground. So using the ground effectively is going to affect the way that player starts to create rotational motion and sequencing of the different parts of their body. That sequencing eventually gets to the top of the chain and ends in delivering the bat to the ball. Now, that's a 30,000-foot view. There's a lot of detail inside of each one of these different categories that we don't have time to go into today, but that's a 30,000-foot view on how every single player creates speed and power when they swing a baseball bat. And if you can look at the way you coach mechanics, making sure that all of these different areas positively affect one another, you're going to be helping your players get a ton more speed and power out of their swing. We have a lot of protocols for this stuff coming. We're kind of in our infancy here with VELO Sports and getting all of this out to the baseball world. But we have a number of different protocols. We have 3 different protocols for ground reaction forces that we're going to be releasing here in the next few months. We have 2 different protocols for sequencing. We have 2 different protocols for bat delivery. We have a whole bunch of content that's coming down the pipeline really soon that's going to complement and support what we do with just our neurological overspeed training. So that's all coming. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about today is one other product that we have at VELO that I think is a really cool thing and something that I think everybody should be taking a look at, and that's our VELO puck. So how many people have had a player that's tried like a puck knob bat or tried some of the new bats that have the bigger weights on the end? Okay, so what we made is a detachable one so that you can make any bat that you own into a puck knob bat. There's 2 sizes that just fit on the end. We can also use this with our overspeed training system in order to make it a counterweight training system, and that's got its own protocols. And again, I wish we had time to get into all of the weeds there, but if you have questions about any of that, come see us at our booth. When we're talking about puck knobs, I think it's important to look at what this actually does when you buy a puck knob bat or you convert a bat into a puck knob bat with our VELO puck. It has to do with balance point. All right, so if we measure the effective playing length of the bat, so that's this body. So let's take a 33 drop 3 bat. The effective playing length of that bat tends to be somewhere in the ballpark of about 32.25 inches. So essentially the player gripping the bat just above the handle. I mean, again, it's going to change. Some players grip it on the butt of the knob. There's differences there, but let's call the effective playing length about 32.25. Well, when you take a puck knob and add that to it, our VELO pucks are about 1 inch long and they weigh 2.25 ounces. Now, there's a reason that they weigh 2.25 ounces. We tested up to, I think, about 5 ounces and down into the ones because it's really important. What we're trying to do when we add this puck is we're trying to get the balance point of the bat to shift toward the handle. Now, what happens when the balance point of the bat shifts down? Well, the big thing it does is it reduces the MOI, or moment of inertia, of the bat. Think of moment of inertia as the effective weight of the bat when we're trying to swing it rotationally around us. The higher the MOI, the more resistance, the heavier the bat is, the slower we swing it. The lower the MOI of the bat, the lighter the bat, the faster we can swing it, the less resistance we have, okay? So what we're doing with this puck knob is we're adding a tiny bit of weight, but we're adding that weight behind the player's hands on the end of the bat in order to move the balance point, lower the MOI of the bat, and make it effectively lighter so that the player can swing it faster, okay? If we get much heavier, I think our breaking point, and again, Tyler would have all this data over at our booth, but I want to say our breaking point was right around 3.75 ounces. If we got heavier than that, no matter what we would do, it would affect the balance point. Because we're adding 3.75 ounces to the bat, we'd still get a higher MOI bat out of it. And if we got less than a certain amount of weight that we were adding on, we weren't adding enough to shift the balance point enough, and the MOI change wasn't enough. So we kind of found that happy point right around that 2.25 ounce range where we're going to get the maximum effective change in balance point and MOI of the baseball bat. So that's what happens. Now, why is that important? Well, it's really important for a lot of different reasons. Again, it affects that MOI, and that calculation is pretty complicated. But again, we can go through and show that to you. You know, with your drop 3 bats, we tend to see an MOI change of about 1.5 to 3% reduction. That depends on the characteristics of the bat we're putting it on, because not every bat is created equal. Some bats have balance points further toward the end, some are closer to the handle. But that's about the range there. Now you're going to see even bigger changes if you're dealing with like a drop 5 bat. We see on average about a 4 to 6% change. Softball bats, youth bats, those can see up to an 8% reduction in MOI by adding a VELO puck. So that's some pretty neat stuff. All right, so a couple things here. We did a really big study out in Utah looking at how does this affect players. You know, we just had them hit balls on a launch monitor, then we put the VELO pucks on, instantaneously looked at the data and saw what changed. Because this isn't something, I mean, yes, you could use it with our training system for counterweight training, but this is made to go on the bat in a game for somebody to have immediate effective results from it. The biggest thing we saw, which was actually kind of cool, was we saw increased launch angles. So the plane of the bat swing changes a little bit here because of that counterweighting. And we saw a lot of players in the study that were like players that hit too many ground balls, that couldn't get the ball to launch straight or up a little bit. We saw, I think it was like a 40% increase in launch angle with a lot of those players. It was a really big result. The next thing that we want out of this is we have reduced MOI of the bat, and you can get that without having to lose plate coverage. Like the old thing that you would do if you needed a bat to be lighter for a player is you gave him a lighter bat, right? Well, now you're losing about, whatever that inch or whatever it's going to be of plate coverage that you're getting. This becomes incredibly effective for players. This becomes incredibly effective for youth players as they're just jumping up to that next level. Like they've been using the drop 10, drop 8 bats, and now they're in a league, they got to play a drop 5 bat. Well, if that bat's a little bit too heavy for them, that can actually hurt their speed development, and it can make it harder for them to create bat speed. If we can reduce the MOI of that new bat, we can get kind of a stopgap without having to buy a completely different bat on that new drop 5 that's going to help them increase speed. So there's a lot of really cool things. These are approved for in-game use now with Perfect Game, USSSA, a lot of the different youth leagues. They've only been out for about 7 months now, but we're working on all of the other leagues in the world, but it's coming. This is definitely a cool thing because, again, without having to buy a custom bat that you'd get in the majors to try out a puck knob, now all you have to do is get a VELO puck, and you can see if that's going to be a benefit for your game. All right, friends, 1811 is our booth, so come see us if you have any questions. We got some great specials on all of this stuff. Follow us at VELO Sports, velosports.com. Email us at info@velosports. And I am here for a few minutes, and I'm happy to take any of your questions. So appreciate you guys having us here as the first talk here at the ABCA. All right, how can we help?
Thank you for the presentation. Quick question, how do you manage overall workload for players versus doing all of this underspeed training versus taking regular swings during the season or out of the season?
Underspeed training. I got a friend that I got to tell a friend that said that. It's overspeed training, but it's all good. Well, the nicest thing about the workload when you're dealing with overspeed training is like that whole session takes like 15 minutes, okay? Now, come talk to Matt Antonelli at our booth. He just ran this program with like 80 kids. The best way to do it, we've found, with groups is you kind of make it a station. That whole training program, that whole protocol's not that many swings. I mean, they're going to go through that in like 8 to 10 minutes or so, and they need to warm up a little bit beforehand, and they'll be a little bit spent afterwards for about 5 minutes. But I think in a general sense, this isn't like I'm telling you need to add 2 hours of training a week for your players. I'm telling you you need to add like 15 minutes 3 days a week. So it's not really that much.
This will be the last one.
I'm just curious, take your example of the player that increases his speed by 6%.
Yep.
How much of that 6% transfers over to an actual game-like situation? Do you guys track that data?
That 6% gain that we're saying in bat speed is actually tested in a cage hitting a ball. So what we're looking at there, when we're-
Game-like situations. Let's track it to the game.
Absolutely. So we definitely need more of that data. Those studies will be done. I've done those studies in other sports. I have done those studies in other sports. I've done a lot of them in golf, where we've actually seen the gains 100% translate to the game experience. Now, in baseball, again, there's a lot of skill that's involved in the specifics of making sure you hit the ball, right? This is actually the main reason that we don't do overspeed training while we're hitting balls, okay? What we want the player to do is max out those speeds and then apply those speeds in the cage to the next balls that they're gonna hit. So we, in general, if we're going from before hitting a ball in a cage, seeing 70-mile-an-hour bat speed, do the training, all drive swings, go back in the cage, we'll see 75, 76 miles an hour right then. My theory is that it will translate nearly 100% to in-game performance, just because I've seen that in other sports in actual university level research studies. We haven't done that yet, but it's certainly to come.